right, we've got a good group in here. I'm going to get us started here. So again, thank you for joining us today. We're talking today about how to incorporate SMS into your engagement strategy. And I'm Brianne Wheeler, and I have Cameron Aubuchon here with me. And we'll just go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm the marketing director at PropFuel. Well, I work in software now. I have over 10 years of experience working for in a marketing and communications capacity for an AMC and also for the Texas Medical Association. And I speak often on topics like this one. I've spoke at ASAE Annual last year and a couple of digital nows over the years. The first one was probably in, 2014. So it's been a while now for that. And regularly on webinars like this one. So I'm happy to be with you all today. Hi, Cassandra. Thanks for saying hi. Cameron?
Yeah, I'm Cameron Aubuchon. I'm co-founder and CTO here at PropFuel. We've been doing PropFuel since 2017, it's almost 7 years now. And before that, I worked for Peach New Media, which is an LMS in the space that is now part of Community Brands, but been working in the association space for too many years to count at this point, my whole career. So excited to be here and talk SMS.
Awesome. First, I'm going to go over what we'll be talking about today. We have three main objectives here. The first is just to get a general idea of why SMS is really a great channel for associations to utilize. Secondly, we'll talk about some steps to warm up your members and your community to the idea of communicating with your organization over text. I think for a lot of associations, it's still newer. And then also some examples. We'll get into some use cases that associations like yours are using to get the attention and action of members, which is, of course, what we're always going for, is to have that ongoing continuous engagement. First, I have a question for you all. I'm curious of those here, who is using SMS for member engagement currently? And if not, do you plan to? I would love to get an idea, a feel for where you're at with that to shape today's conversation. So just a yes or no, and then maybe if you plan to, kind of what's your timeline on that? Okay, so looking into options, figuring out the legality. Justin, I love that. We'll get into some of that today. Just started. Stephanie, planning to for renewals. That's a great use case. Hope so. Awesome. In the process. So kind of a mix here. Not sure. I love the not sure ones because I think that today's conversation will clear up some of the challenges or obstacles do you feel like you're having in implementing it. Awesome. Denzel, you use it to send polls. I love that. I would love to hear more about it. Okay. So what is SMS? We'll just get very rudimentary here for a moment. SMS is short for short messaging service, and an SMS has 160 characters. Multimedia messaging service, MMS is non-text content, so pictures, video files, things like that. And outbound, there's an outbound function and an inbound function. So outbound can be sent to send timely messages to a group of members or prospective members. And then inbound is, I think of it more as kind of on demand. So it's really dictated at the member by the member when they need something or they're interested in something and they want to have a direct line of communication in a way that's different from, say, email or phone. And I like this stat. I did not know this until I learned from Cameron and the team a couple weeks ago. Emojis take up more than one character in an SMS message. So I guess they can take up several, right? Cam, 2, 3?
Yep, it gets fairly complicated depending on the emoji, depending on how many you have. We implemented a character counter in the app that was way more complicated than we thought it would be going into it. But yeah.
Yeah. So if, say, it's like if for a 4-letter word, if that takes up 4 characters, one emoji might take up like three of those of the 160. So like interesting little tidbit of technology that I didn't know prior. So I wanted to go over open rates and a little comparison here of open rates across channels. So for associations, email is the primary mode of communication for probably most of you, if not all. I'm making a bit of an assumption there, but I would say that most of the time associations are frequently communicating over email, whether it's one-on-one or in more of a broadcast function. So the open rate in one of the higher logic studies that I looked at, their benchmarking study, has the open rate at 35% for email for associations, which is actually pretty good. I think that's higher than the other industry averages. I've seen, like 10, 16%. It just varies pretty greatly across industries. So that's pretty good. However, the SMS open rate is 98%. And that is not specific to the association space, but it makes sense, right? Because the more relevant, first of all, it's on our phones. We have it right here. It's arguably we get less text messages than we do emails. Although I guess some of us are getting a lot of group messages. I am these days. However, it just seems like it's a more direct line of communication than email at this point. And for important member messages, it's just a really good choice. It's more direct and has the potential to be more personal than email. So I'm going to go over a few just points here about why it's specifically good for associations, and particularly so for associations. So first is the time sensitivity of membership and membership related communications. There are a lot of points in the year when your communications to members and your larger community really are time sensitive. So some examples here, membership renewals, of course, is a huge priority for a lot of us when it comes to making sure there's a direct line of communication. Also, early bird deadlines for conferences and events, that gets widely communicated many times in my experience for larger events in particular. Also, discounted membership campaigns. So if there's a group of prospects that you're trying to reach and you have a discount that's only good for a certain amount of time, that's a great opportunity. And then also advocacy efforts. So some organizations are very advocacy focused. And so if there are public policy communications that are very time sensitive, often they are, text is a great way to get the word out to your audience. And then, so the next one here is the personal nature of the association to member relationship. So, individuals join associations for a combination of reasons, from education to career advancement and everything in between. And I think that the association relationship tends to be more personal and individualized, or at least it should be, if you're a member and you're looking to connect with other similar people in your industry or around a certain cause. And so the relationship is just naturally more personal. And I think there's an increased likelihood that a member of an organization who has opted in to participate with an organization is more likely to be receptive to receiving a mode of communication like text messaging than, say, you buy something online and you try to, they try to get you to opt into text messaging. It might just be a nuisance. I actually have a couple of those on my phone right now that are just kind of annoying, and it's just more of the same in terms of here's a discount or whatever it is, and it just ends up being spammy, just like everything else. The third point about it that I think is really great for associations is it just gives members a choice. We're constantly, whether it's doing a la carte membership setups, or if we're always trying to give members a choice in how they want to communicate, how they want to engage, if they want to volunteer, how they want to show up and participate with the organization. And so there are so many ways to communicate now. Some of your members probably prefer social media. Some of them prefer email. I know I was presenting at ASAE annual last year, and this woman stood up and said, my members only want to be spoken to on the phone. They only want a phone call. They're not checking their email. And that's probably more rare, I would say. But it's absolutely, depending on your membership and even age, it's really great to just give your members a choice. I pulled this stat that the millennial generation prefers text messaging over other communication channels because it's more personal, less invasive, and makes them feel more valued by brands. And I think that's what we're trying to do when we're connecting with associations of members of our association. And so more and more millennials and then even Gen Z are coming into the workforce now. So if you're with a professional organization, connecting with them the way they want to be connected with is incredibly important. And even here, I have this example here. So a couple of our organizations have student members, and they always want to find out about what the second email address is that they could utilize, because if the primary student membership is tied to a student email address and then they graduate and they go on to teach or whatever it is that they go on to do, they're not using that email address anymore. So there is just a ton of use cases that you can utilize for text, and also not be over the top with it. And then finally, making it personal. SMS can be very personalized. The inbound and outbound options allow for one-on-one dialogue, and really the more information you have on your members, the higher degree of personalization you're going to be able to have when it comes to text messaging. And the personalization of the member experience, I can't remember what study this was, but I've seen it in several where it's the top priority for associations is personalization. And this is just another way to do it and another way to reach them. The other thing to think about is how this saves time for your staff. If you're going and calling every single person who is set to renew, if you can just send a text message and get them directly and get them this way, it might be a much easier and less laborious way to connect with them. And then, of course, the content of the text message is likely to be highly relevant if you're sending them something. And that is most likely going to be because you know something about them and you want to share something that's relevant to their member experience. And that goes the other way around too. So if they're texting in to your text messaging address, to your text phone number, it is almost always going to be something that is very highly relevant to their member experience, something they need, something they want, or they're having trouble with. So very personal. Cam, do you want to add anything to that? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, I think we'll get into some more specific examples later, which will be helpful.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you kind of nailed the use cases here.
Awesome. So I'm going to relay it back to you all. So I'm curious, what do you see as you've been, seeing what we've talked about so far? What do you see is the biggest concern or challenge to using SMS for your member engagement? I know early on, a few of you said you're not sure, the legality is a concern. What is it that, another way to ask that is like, what might be holding you back from using it? Okay, Melissa, just like email, people get overwhelmed. I can see that being a concern for sure. I think you have to be judicious with the use of text, because you certainly don't want to do that. Not keeping their phone number updated. Yep. Okay. That's a really good one. Opting in from members. Dominique will get into that in a moment. That is, these are all the question marks that I think we have. And even I've had as a marketer over the years, like, how do I do this? How is it different from email? We're just so used to and rely so much on email for those communications that it's just a little bit of a shift there. Legal, getting permissions, cost and process of technology. Okay. Nice, Rachel. Frequency and value-added communications, and then getting executive leadership on board. Yeah. Janon, so when it was 2011, I had just gotten back from living outside of the country temporarily, and I was asked to do a consulting project with an AMC for one of their large clients because they were afraid to use social media because their organizational members were all case managers, so all clinicians. And they were just very concerned from like, they had just come from the world of HIPAA and HIPAA violations. And they thought like, we just can't share anything at all on social media. We can't do this because it is, we're going to potentially run into some legal issues. And we got around that. So I feel like a little bit like that's where we're at now with SMS a decade later or whatever it is we're just kind of still feeling it out. Justin, you feel like SMS is more invasive? Yeah, I think I could see that. It can be invasive if you don't want it and it's not relevant, right?
I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as you're thinking through what your SMS strategy is going to be. It needs to be very different from email. Like you can't be as frequent, you can't have as much content in it. You really need to think about the medium and like, is what I'm sending worth making all the people I'm sending it to pick up their phones and look at their phone? Because essentially what you're doing. And people are going to be a lot more quick to opt out of SMS than they generally are for email. Like the bar for annoyance is definitely lower than or the tolerance for being annoyed is a lot lower. So it feels more high stakes of like, I need to make sure every message is valuable and relevant. And I think there's definitely some ways to do that. You just have to have a different mindset than, not that we're trying to send irrelevant emails, but the volume and frequency is definitely going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's true. Justin, you also said that your unexpected SMS messages come from politicians trying to get you to donate. That is, I opted out of all of those already.
Well, the funny thing with the political messages is that we'll get into the laws around SMS consent, but the politicians thankfully opted themselves out of the requirements for opt-ins. So that's why you get way more political messages than anything else, because they're the only industry that's not required for you to say it's okay to text before they start texting you, which is quite annoying.
Mind-boggling, actually. I didn't know about that until you shared it. Do you want to address this now, Cam, from Rick? How safe is sending SMS messages since they are not encrypted?
I mean, I think like at the end of the day, the carriers are the one who have full control over that ecosystem. So like technically speaking, what we're doing is we're integrated with a company called Twilio that is integrated with the carriers, and everything is kind of a direct connection over their network. But yeah, to your point, it's not an encrypted channel, in that I would definitely not send any, hyper personal information or login links that don't require, authentication on the other side and stuff like that. Similar to how you wouldn't send certain information over email. But I think at the end of the day, it's more about like the expectations on the other side. I think people are generally kind of cautious about like clicking links that you get in a text, because we tend to get a decent amount of spam things. So you have to keep those considerations in mind as you're designing your text. Like I would not send a text that's like, hey, you won something, click this long obscure link to claim your prize. Like that's not going to get any engagement. You have to keep that in mind in terms of your messaging and what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. And I think beyond the SMS channel, this is an excellent opportunity to take a look at your whole communications and marketing program. And for a few reasons, like we know now just from just the start of this conversation that you want to be choosy with how you're using SMS. So the question is taking a look at, okay, what are the most important areas where we can utilize this to leverage attention when we really need to get it? And then also from the security standpoint, like we know that we're not going to send sensitive information here. So where does that go if we're going to send it? It's a great opportunity to just take a overhaul at all of your channels and prioritizing what makes sense to send out where. Thank you all for all the input. I love having all the thoughts and questions and comments. So just getting into a little bit of the legal side. So the question is, okay, so now we've decided we want to explore SMS. How do we begin? The steps are different from than they are for email. So the first step is to get the consent, the opt-in. That is incredibly essential. So the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, it requires the express written consent from consumers in advance, I guess, except for politicians. And so that is distinctly different from email. From email, we know we have a CAN spam act where we cannot just go and send whatever we want to anyone. We have to, provide an unsubscribe link and things like that. But we can solicit originally via email, and go from there. That's not the case with SMS, which I think is why we have some of the concerns around utilizing it at all, because we don't want to do something wrong, especially if there's going to be some kind of, legal process in place. It just seems like it's not worth it. But if you get that opt-in, that's really the first step. There are 3 good ways to do that. The easiest way is likely to use an email campaign. So this is outbound saying, hey, do you want to opt in? The process for that is essentially creating your campaign for anybody who you don't have consent for, which it may be nobody. It likely is if you haven't ever asked for it before. And then ask them to give them your mobile number, and then, affirm consent for them to receive SMS messages from you. The second way is inbound. So you can say, here is a phone number. If you'd like to opt in, then text this code to the SMS. And you've done this before, likely, for whatever it is, a discount, or that's usually what it is for me. If it's like a retailer and they say opt in, text this 5-digit code to this phone number, and we'll opt you in. So that's the second way. That requires a little bit more motivation, I think, from the member than sending it out and just saying, hey, do you want to do this? So you could try both. And then the third is offline or externally. If you have some opt-ins already, you can sync that data to your text messaging system and have them opted in that way. So requirements and best practices. So here are the things you have to do when you start a campaign and decide to utilize this channel. First, you have to explicitly state who you are, what you're going to text them about, and how often you will text them. So there needs to be some kind of like, hey, we'll reach out to you once a month for on this type of information. And then you need to clearly communicate how they can opt out. So I know I've done this before, and it's here for a reason, because if you can scroll back and say, I don't want to get these anymore, you can scroll up to the first one and it'll tell you opt out by saying stop or whatever it is. And then you must state that the message and data rates may apply to receive SMS messages, and you should link to your data privacy policy as well. You probably have that already for other modes of communication, and that's a great opportunity to link to the whole privacy policy so that they can see how you will be using their information. So this is an example of the confirmation. You can just say you're agreeing to receive recurring text messages from us. You can read this here. It's pretty technical. It's not the most warm. It's like transactional almost is how I think of it. Is like, this is just kind of like what you have to do to initiate the text relationship.
And these are specifically called out in the regulations, both, the TCPA establishes a legal regime around it, and then the carriers have their own set of, here's what you must do in order to use our networks. Mm-hmm. And functionally, there's only 3 carriers in the United States, so they kind of call the shots there. So that's why it's like, you have to explicitly say help and stop. You have to say message frequency. You have to say message and data rates may apply. And I think the other thing that's relatively new, they just implemented this over the last 6 months or so, is there's also a whole campaign registration regime that you need to go through in order to send messages now. So when you onboard with an SMS provider, whether it's PropFuel or someone else, you'll have to go through a campaign registration process, where you're essentially saying, here's my phone number, here's what I plan on doing with it, here's how I'm going to collect opt-ins, down to the level of, like, they say, if you're doing it on a website, include a screenshot of that website or a link to it. So, and they have people who are manually checking all this stuff to maintain compliance. And they are, if you go through the steps and the hoops, and we guide you through that on the PropFuel side, then you get a registered campaign, you can send messages, you'll have good deliverability. But if you don't, the carriers will essentially just filter out all your messages, and you can send all day long, but nothing will get through. So it's definitely a process when you onboard. You can't just onboard and start sending messages the next day. You have to think through your use cases, how you're going to collect opt-ins. There's a registration process. So definitely keep that in mind as you're developing your strategy. Is I would kind of build in a 1 to 2 month buffer to handle all that stuff up front before you're going to start, sending your first messages.
Yeah, that's great, because I think sometimes, especially if we're, say, behind on a conference registration or something like that, like, what else can we do? Like, oh, we can send text messages, and like, that's not going to work in this case. You have to have a little bit more planned out.
And there was a question in here: if members already consented to communications when signing up for membership, do we still have to do an opt-in method? So the standard here is they have to have express written consent, essentially, to opt in to text messaging. So if you just said, like, a checkbox that's like, yes, you can contact me, that's not good enough. It has to be specifically, here's my mobile number, and yes, you can text this number, for this purpose. So it really depends on what your opt-in flow is, as far as what that looks like. But it has to be very specific. Yes, you are allowed to text message me at this number, kind of thing, as opposed to like a blanket, here's my phone number. If you have their phone number but you don't have their consent, then you have to take that second step to collect consent from them.
Yeah, I think a lot of members of organizations may still use their work address if it's a professional membership, or I'm sorry, a work phone number for their main phone number. So it's also a good opportunity to just collect mobile numbers if you don't have them, because I think a lot of the times it's like, well, let's just default use like our regular company number, and that's how people can reach me. So it's another great source of updating data as well. And yes, Melinda, we'll send the slides to you after the presentation. Okay, so quick question for you. After you have members opt in, what do you think you would use SMS for first? Like, what is the use case that you're like, okay, I could see this really being useful and getting member attention, and getting them to act for this project that we're working on, or this event? See, I'll give you a minute there. Justin, you have an example here. Oh, member renewals. Lots of those just came in. Yeah, so I think that's a really like low-hanging fruit use case, because it's tied to revenue, right? So really important for the organization to have renewals, and let's see, promotion or renew sign up for membership. Yeah. Renewals. Cam, looks like you answered that question. Thank you. And webinar promotion. I like that one a lot. Is it Nalia? Leah? Yes. And I like that a lot, because if it's a really important webinar, especially if it's something that's timely, that has to do with trends that are happening, or, a couple of years ago when we were having important COVID related communications, I know there are a lot of healthcare organizations that were trying to get out information really quickly. So that would be a great one for education. I don't know if you do a lot of webinars. I would say not all webinars. That would just be my personal, advice there. Conference registration. Yes, a lot of the time, conference registration is a big deal, launching registration. So that's a great one. Justin, you said definitely member renewals. I'm trying to think of how last minute alerts for early bird discount can coexist with email. Yeah, that's definitely something to work through. Awesome. Annual golf event and last minute. Yeah, last minute, I think that's really good. If you have your program set up, I definitely could see using it for like a last minute push, even incentivizing a last minute push for a registration for an event especially if you're behind the number that you want to be at for the revenue goal. Last minute venue changes. Yeah, that's great. We haven't gone into too much of that yet, but on-site conference communications, absolutely. Like that's it. That's great. And I've been to some conferences who have done that very well, very tastefully. It's not over the top, and it's just important, relevant information when you land in the city that you're going to for the event.
Someone had put the example earlier of like when you check into a hotel, they send you a message that says, if you have any questions. But I think that's a great like analogy to the conference use case of like, even if it's not, you're sending a bunch of messages throughout the conference, even if it's just one message at the beginning that says, hey, we're available at this number. If you need us, text us. I think is a great use case.
Yep, absolutely. At the airport too, SMS sends you a message about your flight changes. I find those very, very helpful, because otherwise you're going to, at best, your app, or you're just Googling the flight number or whatever it is. So I love those too. And even sometimes when I've been at the airport and I still get the update over SMS before I go and happen to see it on the screen or at the gate or whatever it is. So, yep. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go through a few use cases here. The first initial one, so after you've gotten kind of like the legal stuff out of the way, then we want to welcome the member or community person that you're in contact with to your text messaging program. So we recommend that you say who you are, what you expect for having like opted, what they can expect for having opted in. So like it's similar to what I was saying before, like we'll send updates on things you want to know, or if it's specific to conference registration, we're going to send you important updates for this event. We'll keep you updated as important information arises. And then
it's important to remember too that like from a user experience standpoint, when they open up a text message, they're going to see the whole history of what you've texted them before is what they're seeing all in the same place. So like as you're crafting your messages, think about it not just in terms of one discrete message at a time, but they're getting the conversation history is what they see when they click through on the notification.
Absolutely. So after you've done that, we have a few examples here of and of course you all have brought this up already. Membership renewals is a big one. So again, this is like more of a strategic question of when do you want to do this? What is the date? Like say it's like a 1 month out or whatever it is that you want to say, okay, we're going to send out the text message 1 month prior to the membership expiration. The given the 98% open rate, they'll almost certainly see it. So that's going to cut down on one of the most popular campaigns. If you don't know, PropFuel is also an email engagement platform. And so one of the most popular campaigns our clients have run is associations will say, okay, let's just ask the question, are you intending to renew, or did you know your membership lapsed? And in our experience across all the associations, it's about like 55%, something like that, of individuals who say, no, I didn't even know my membership lapsed. And so using SMS as the channel is going to cut down on those people who say, no, I didn't know that my membership lapsed. I think this is one of the top use cases. So anything else on this, Cam?
Nope.
Second is onboarding. So we talk about this all the time. The member acquisition, when you acquire a new member, it's incredibly important and the perfect opportunity to learn more about them right away, because the more that you know about them, the better you can serve them and the more likely they are to be satisfied with their experience. So we have one of our clients is a movie theater and showplace icon. And I love this. What they do is when they have this extras membership, which is, gives them like free popcorn and things like that. And so when they join, they receive an email asking about their movie genre preferences. So this is a multi-channel here. So first it's an email like, hey, what's your preference? Do you like rom-coms or action movies, whatever it is? And then they cater their extras benefits based on the preference that they chose during that the genre question. And so they did one that said, this week watch Mission Impossible and get a free popcorn. So they're driving people to the theater, incentivizing them specifically on what they know they'll like. So I love this. I know it's, most of you aren't running movie theaters, but I think there are some equivalent examples of what you could do with this in the onboarding stage. Events and deadlines. So this is one we've kind of talked about already. If you have a deadline coming up, if you have important information, you can use SMS for this use. And our NRCA is using it to, they have this annual roofing day, and they did 2 different key communications. One was last day to register, we need you there. And you'll notice like this is actually the text that they used. It's very simple, incredibly simple. And that's something that we apply in our question-based communications with the email channel in PropFuel. Is the idea is that you're kind of interrupting the pattern of communications. It's not a bulletin board of information. It's not a big text block. It's very simple, like get the point across, keep it simple so that they will not lose attention. Especially you don't want that in text. And then the other part of this was book your room. So accommodations. I know that when I worked for a large healthcare association, our annual conference was severely behind on registration. Was trending okay, but the room situation was bad, and we had a huge block, and we we're going to have to pay a penalty if we didn't fill the block. So this is a great opportunity to use it as well, is to say like, this is the hotel, this is the date, like you get a good deal, go and book your hotel. And then the fourth one is content delivery. This one is on the unique side, I think, and I think this can be utilized for associations in many different ways because of all of your educational opportunities and everything you share when it comes to your profession. So NRCA is using SMS to deliver content. So one of them they had was need flyers and info to recruit industry workers. We have options for you in English and Spanish. So there was a link in there that said like, click here and we'll get you to the flyers that you need. And it just is so simple to me. Like it's one of those things that their members might need. Then they have to go, okay, I have to go create a flyer. And now I have to have it in 2 languages. And to have that done for you and at your fingertips is just awesome. So that's a great one. I think you can use this across, if there's a new version of the standards of practice, if you're in a healthcare organization, or any really important pieces of content, even perhaps new journal publications or new versions of the magazine, I could see working really well for that too. So that's all we have today. I know we went through that. Oh, it's been 40 minutes actually. It always flies by. So if you are feeling like you want to just explore SMS more, and also the PropFuel platform, as I said, it's also an email engagement platform that works differently from how you deliver email right now. We'd love to talk with you, and I'm going to put up Robson. Our colleague is going to put up a little poll here if you're interested in talking to us more about, if you're a client, definitely you can fill this out to just talk to us more about SMS and how to hook it into your current platform. And then if you're not a client, then you can talk to us and just set up some time to talk about the platform as a whole. Rachel, the back end of the platform and how it works. Let's see. Cam, what do you think on that? Do you have anything that you could share?
No, I don't have anything prepped for that, but definitely we'd love to show you that both from an SMS standpoint and PropFuel as a whole. If you sign up for a meeting, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and Rachel, the idea of that is that it's a little bit more relevant to your association's needs, that we'll go through examples. There are so many different examples in different types of organizations that we can make it more specific to what you want to look at, essentially. So that's all I've got. I'd love to hear questions if you have any. Leslie, we have one here. What are your thoughts on using SMS for emergency communications at events? Yeah, I could definitely see, like, if the power's out or something like that. I think and it's easy to do, right? You can go into the platform and set an outbound. If you have the list ready, you should have you need your conference list to send it out to. But absolutely, I think it's a great use. Does anyone use it internationally? I think there's some thoughts
So
around.
yeah, in PropFuel, we only support US and Canada. There's different rules and regulations and all that stuff by country. So that's not something we support. I think there are other platforms that support it. And if anybody else has any experience there, feel free to chime in.
Awesome. Yeah, anybody else have any questions, comments? I appreciate you joining us today and exploring this. I know it's like there's always, between AI and everything else, there's always something else to look at and focus on. So thank you for sharing, and then sharing your time and your questions and comments with us. One other thing that I'm going to have Robson put up is we have a content piece on this. It's actually a lot of the information that we've talked about today, but if you want it in like just a PDF format, it's a little bit more consumable than a slide deck. We'll send it over to you. And yeah, Robson just shared it. So you can click on that and feel free to share that with anybody on your team or a colleague or friend if they're just curious and have some of those same questions that you do related to SMS. All right, I think that's it. Thank you all again for joining us today. And Cam, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah.
And we hope to talk to all of you soon. Thank
Thanks,
you. Have an
everybody.
awesome day.